The great hall of the Galactic Council was silent except for the low hum of the translator drones. Representatives of hundreds of worlds sat in a wide circle under the dome of shifting starlight. It was supposed to be a normal session, a polite meeting about trade routes and cultural exchanges. For 1,000 years, there had been peace across the galaxy, and no one thought it would ever end. That peace shattered when the central holodisplay lit up without warning. A massive reptilian face appeared, scales the color of burning iron, eyes glowing with cold hatred. The voice that followed was deep and sharp, echoing through the chamber. Like a war drum. "The age of peace is over," the alien said. "I am Krelok the Conqueror, and I will take what I desire. Surrender your fleets and your worlds, or be erased from the stars." Gasps rippled through the chamber. The ambassador from the Zalorians dropped his glass of water. Tharvan Noble's frill went stiff with fear. Even the ancient Virexian elder, who had seen more wars than anyone alive, looked shaken. No one had heard a threat like this in centuries. Every eye turned to the human seat, expecting the representative from Earth to be pale with terror. Instead, Captain Myra Holt leaned back in her chair and laughed. It wasn't a polite laugh, or a nervous laugh. It was a real, amused laugh, sharp and sudden, cutting through the heavy silence like a blade. The sound made even the translator drones hesitate. Dozens of alien faces turned toward her in shock, some offended, others confused. Mira didn't stop. She wiped a tear from her eye and gave a slow, deliberate smile toward the warlord's image. Krylok's eyes narrowed. "Do you find death amusing, human?" he growled. His claws tapped the armrest of his throne, the sound like knives on stone. Mira tilted her head and spoke in a calm, steady voice. "No," she said. "I just find you amusing." Murmurs burst across the chamber. The Zalorian delegate hissed. "You will provoke him." The Virexian elder whispered. "Does she not understand who she's speaking to?" Mira ignored them all. "You're making a big mistake," she told the warlord. "You think you're the first to threaten us? You think your words are enough to make us break, but we've dealt with worse." Krelok bared his teeth in a grin that promised violence. "Then you will be the first to burn." The transmission cut abruptly, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the chair of the council, a tall insectoid with wings that shimmered under the lights, turned toward Mira. "Earth has just been declared the first target of his war. Your people will be destroyed within days unless you surrender." Mira leaned forward, folding her hands on the table. "We won't surrender," she said simply. "We're not built for it." The chair's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "Cannot win against Krelok. His fleets outnumber yours 100 to 1. Mira's smile was faint, almost secretive. "Maybe, but numbers aren't everything." Without another word, she reached into her jacket and withdrew a small silver data key. She placed it on the table in front of her and pressed her thumb against the surface. Somewhere far away, in a place no alien in the chamber knew existed, a secure channel opened. Myra's voice was clear and steady as she spoke into the com. "This is Holt. Authorization Gamma Black." "Open the Black Vault," quiet chime confirmed. The order had been received. She slid the key back into her pocket. The chair tilted their head. "What is the Black Vault?" Mira looked around at the gathered delegates, her gaze steady. "Something humanity promised never to open. Unless we wanted the galaxy to remember why they signed the peace treaty in the first place." Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. The Zalorian leaned toward the Tharvan noble and whispered, "They kept weapons. I told you they kept weapons." The Tharvan's eyes darted toward Mira, wide with worry. No one in the council knew what exactly the Black Vault was, only that. The words carried an old, dangerous weight. It had been centuries since humanity fought in a galactic war, but their history before the peace was full of battles that ended civilizations. Mira stood, the human crest on her uniform catching the dome's light. "You're afraid of him." "Because you've forgotten how to fight," she said to the council. "We haven't." Without waiting for permission, she turned and walked out of the chamber. The heavy doors sliding shut behind her. In the quiet she left behind, the council members looked at one another, uneasy. Krylok's threat still hung in the air, but so did something else, something just as dangerous. For the first time in 1,000 years, the humans had been provoked. and judging by the look in Captain Mira Holt's eyes, the galaxy was about to learn what that really meant. Beneath the frozen wastelands of Antarctica, a train of black-armored soldiers moved through a tunnel carved from solid ice. Their boots crunched softly, and their visors reflected the faint blue glow of embedded guide lights. The passage led deeper and deeper underground, into a place that had not been entered in over 3 centuries. Ahead of them, a set of towering steel doors waited, each one stamped with faded warning symbols from a war the galaxy had almost forgotten. Above the doors, in bold letters, were the words, Project Hellfire. The lead officer stopped and held up a small command device. A soft beep echoed in the frozen air, and the doors slowly began to slide apart. Steam hissed from the edges as the seals broke for the first time in generations. Beyond them lay a chamber so vast it seemed to stretch into darkness, filled with the shapes of ships sleeping under layers of frost, in orbit above Earth. Captain Myra Holt stood in the command deck of the Iron Dawn, her eyes fixed on a holographic map of incoming enemy fleets. Krelok was moving faster than expected, his vanguard already within striking distance of the colony worlds on the outer rim. The Council's spies claimed he would bypass smaller planets to strike directly at Earth, hoping to crush humanity in a single decisive blow. Mira knew better Krylok would try to bleed them first, to scare them into surrender. He didn't understand humans well enough to know that fear only sharpened their teeth. She turned to her second-in-command, Commander Rafe Voss, a tall man, with a quiet voice and eyes like cold steel. "Status of the vault?" she asked. Rafe's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Opening sequence complete. Systems are coming online. The Omega fleet will be ready in 72 hours. Far away, in the ruins of a human mining outpost on Arton 5, smoke still rose from broken towers and shattered landing pads. Krylok's warriors had come without warning, tearing through the colony's defenses like paper. They left no survivors. At least that's what Krylok thought. Hiding in the wreckage of a destroyed hangar, Corporal Eli Naves pressed a bloodied hand against his side, breathing hard. His squad had been slaughtered in the first wave, but he had managed to crawl into a half-buried Comes array. With trembling fingers, he sent a short-burst transmission toward Earth, carrying data ripped from the Warlord's command net. The information was clear. Krylok's fleet had a weakness, a blind spot in their shield harmonics. If someone could hit it hard enough, entire ships could be crippled in a single strike. Meanwhile, in the deepest chamber of the Black Vault, the last of the dormant systems flickered to life. Massive, mech-stowering war machines clad in black arms stood in rows, their optical sensors glowing faint red in the gloom. Engineers in hazard suits moved between them, checking cables and weapon pods. Farther in, an entire wing of stealth. Cruisers sat on launch rails, their hulls coated with a strange matte finish that swallowed light. These were not the ships humanity had shown to the galaxy. These were the ones they had promised never to use again. In a sealed observation room, General Armin Cade, commander of the Vault forces, watched the revival with grim satisfaction. Once these are in the field, he muttered to himself, Krylok will wish he'd stayed in whatever hole he crawled out of. Back aboard the Iron Dawn, Mira received Eli's transmission. The data was messy, full of static from the damaged relay, but the core message was clear. She downloaded the schematics of Krylok's shields and studied them in silence. The blind spot was small, too small for a standard attack run. But a reckless pilot, one willing to get dangerously close, could make it work. She closed the file and called Rafe to her side. "Tell Cade to prep a strike team. We're going hunting sooner than planned." On Krylok's flagship, the Warlord sat in his throne, watching a holomap of his advancing fleets. He enjoyed the growing panic across the galaxy, the desperate messages from worlds begging for protection. But when one of his captains mentioned the human laughter in the council chamber, his expression darkened. "Find out everything about their Black Vault," he ordered, "and burn it before they can open it." His captains bowed, but none dared to say aloud what they were all thinking, that they didn't know where it was. And if it had stayed hidden this long, finding it would not be easy. 3 days later, the skies over Antarctica split with the roar of engines. One by one, the ships of the Omega fleet rose from the ice, their black hulls gleaming under the cold sun. They climbed into orbit, falling into precise formation around the Iron Dawn. From the bridge, Mira watched them join her, the corners of her mouth tightening into something between a smile and a challenge. Krylok was coming, the galaxy thought. Humanity was unprepared. But the doors had been opened, and the black vault was awake. In the cold darkness between the stars, Krylok's fleet moved like a swarm of metal predators. Dozens of warships formed a spearhead, their hulls bristling with weapons that could strip a planet bare in hours. At the center of the formation, Krylok's flagship loomed, a colossal vessel shaped like a blade, its surface carved with symbols of conquest. On its bridge, the warlord stood before a wide viewing screen, claws wrapped around the rail. His eyes burned as his sensors detected a lone ship ahead, drifting in the emptiness. It was small by comparison, almost insignificant, one human warship, the Iron Dawn. Krylok's second in command let out a low laugh. "They've sent us a message," he said. A pathetic challenge. Krylok tilted his head. "Destroy it. Quickly."
Ow.
On the Iron Dawn, Captain Myra Holt stood at the center of her bridge, hands clasped behind her back.
Ow.
The crew was silent, every eye fixed on their instruments. The enemy ships were closing fast, their signatures bright on the tactical display. Rafe Voss leaned toward her. "We're badly outnumbered," he said quietly. Myra didn't look away from the display. Outnumbered doesn't mean outmatched. She stepped forward, speaking in a tone that carried across the bridge. "Engines to full burn. We'll meet them halfway." The Iron Dawn surged forward, a sleek shadow cutting through the void. When the two forces came into range, Krylok's fleet unleashed the first volley. Streams of energy lit the darkness, lashing toward the lone human ship. But instead of meeting them head-on, the Iron Dawn rolled sharply, diving under the attack with inhuman precision. Alien crews, watching from Krylok's side, stared at their screens in disbelief. Human pilots moved differently, reckless, aggressive, always taking angles that seemed suicidal. Before the warlord's ships could adjust, the Iron Dawn was among them. A sudden flash erupted as the human ship's forward cannons tore through the side of a destroyer. The alien vessel shuddered once and split apart, its debris spinning into space. Krylok's snarl was audible on every channel.
"Blows!"
"Box them in." But Mira had no intention of staying still. She ordered her gunners to target the shield harmonics Eli Naves had discovered, striking at the exact frequencies where the alien defenses were weakest. One after another, enemy ships faltered, shields flickering, armor cracking, systems going dark. From the Council's secure observation room, light years away, dozens of alien delegates watched the live battle feed in stunned silence. They had expected to witness humanity's last stand. Instead, they saw a single ship slicing through an armada like a knife through fabric. The Zalorian ambassador leaned forward, his voice trembling. "They fight like they have nothing to lose." The Phyrexian elder shook his head. "No, they fight like they've been waiting for this." Krylok's frustration grew with each passing minute. He had fought countless wars, faced countless enemies, but never had one ship dared to stand in the middle of his fleet and strike without fear. Enraged, he ordered a direct assault, every nearby vessel to converge and fire at will. The Iron Dawn's hull groaned under the onslaught, shields flaring bright, but Myra didn't flinch. She waited until the enemy ships drew in close, then gave the order, "Release the Hellfire Swarm." Panels along the Iron Dawn's flanks slid open, releasing a cloud of sleek black drones. They moved like living creatures, darting between enemy ships, attaching to their hulls and detonating. With surgical precision, explosions blossomed across Krylok's formation. Turning the tight net, he'd tried to weave into a field of fire and wreckage. The chaos bought the Iron Dawn the opening it needed. Mira called out, "Bring us about, target the flagship." The human warship turned toward him, Krelok leaned over the rail, his claws digging into the metal. He had underestimated them, and he knew it. His flagship shields could withstand the assault, but only if he could keep the human ship at a distance. He ordered a retreat, his voice heavy with rage. Let's fall back, regroup at the Orion Gate. The sudden withdrawal left the battlefield littered with drifting wrecks and fading energy trails. On the Iron Dawn's bridge, the crew let out quiet sighs of relief. Rafe turned to Mira. "They'll be back," he said. Mira nodded. "Yes. And next time, they'll bring everything they have." She stepped closer to the viewing glass, her gaze locked on the distant stars where Krylok's fleet had vanished.
Good.
"I want them to." Far away, on a hidden channel, Mira sent a short message to General Cade in the Black Vault. "They're heading for Orion. Prepare the trap." Krylok's fleets did not return in silence. They came back with fire, across the human colonies. On the outer rim, his warships descended like falling blades, burning through defense grids, broadcasting every act of destruction lived to the galaxy. Entire cities were reduced to glowing scars in the dirt, and his soldiers marched captives, in chains before the cameras. The footage was sent directly to every council world, a message of fear meant to break humanity's will. In the Great Council Chamber, alien delegates watched with grim faces. Some whispered that Earth's time was running out. Others believed the humans would finally beg for help. But they were wrong. On Earth, when the broadcasts reached human networks, something unexpected happened. People didn't cower. They didn't weep. The first reaction was silence, then anger, and then laughter. Across the net, citizens began making parody videos of Krylok's speeches, placing his threats with jokes, turning his growls into ridiculous songs. One clip showed him waving his claws wildly while a human voice dubbed over, "Where's my coffee?" Another placed him in a pink apron holding a tray of cookies. The videos spread faster than Krylok's own propaganda, till entire worlds, human and otherwise, were laughing at him. From the bridge of his flagship, Krylok watched these human-made mockeries with a face that grew darker by the second. "Mock war," he hissed. His second-in-command shifted uneasily. "It seems they refuse to fear you." Krylok slammed a clawed fist against the console. "Then I will give them a reason to fear," he ordered in escalation. More fleets, more strikes, more brutality. But even as the attacks grew worse, the humans fought harder. Civilian ships armed themselves, smugglers ferried supplies through. Blockades and resistance cells sprang up on occupied colonies. Wherever Krylok's soldiers landed, they found themselves harassed by civilians who refused to act like conquered people. Captain Mira Holt watched it all from the Iron Dawn. Every new attack only seemed to harden her crew's resolve. In a war room deep inside the ship, she studied holographic maps of Krylok's supply lines. Rafe stood beside her, pointing to thin, twisting routes across uncharted sectors. "If we hit these convoys, we cut his fleet's throat," he said. Mara's eyes narrowed. "We'll make it look like a game. Small strikes, hit and run. Let him think he's chasing ghosts." Within days, the plan was in motion. Human raiders, many piloted by volunteers with more courage than sense-struck, Krylok's supply ships without warning. They took food, fuel, and ammunition, leaving the hulks drifting in space. Some left graffiti scrawled on the hulls in glowing paint. "Nice try, better luck next time," or simply, "Ha-ha." Each strike was recorded and spread across the networks, just like Krylok's propaganda had been. The galaxy began to see two wars. Krylok's war of fire and fear, and humanity's war of wit and defiance. In the council chamber, tensions shifted. The delegates who once believed Earth was doomed began to wonder if perhaps the humans could actually win. The Varixian elder, who had lived through countless conflicts, leaned forward one day and murmured to the chair, "If Krylok cannot make them fear him, he cannot control them. And if he cannot control them, he will lose." The warlord himself felt the change. His fleets were still powerful, but the humans fought in ways no other species did. They didn't aim for glory or territory, they aimed to humiliate. Every time he sent a fleet to crush them, they struck somewhere else faster than he could predict. It was like trying to hold water in his claws. He grew restless, furious, and desperate. That desperation made him reckless. When a scout ship brought news of a human retreat toward the Orion Gate system, Krylok saw what he thought was his chance. "They are running," he said, a cold smile spreading across his face. "They think they can hide beyond the gate. We will follow. We will finish them." He ordered his entire armada to converge on the system, confident this would be the final battle. On the Iron Dawn, Mira received confirmation of his movement. She stood on the bridge, watching the data streams flow in, and let out a slow breath. "He's coming," she said quietly. Rafe gave a small nod, and the gate is ready. In the shadows beyond the Orion system, the full strength of the Omega fleet waited in silence, hidden from enemy scans. The trap was set. Krylok believed he was about to crush the last of humanity, but in truth, he was marching straight into the jaws they had prepared for him. The Orion Gate hung in the void like a ring carved from starlight, its massive structure turning slowly against the black, built long before humans had left their own solar system. It was a relic of an ancient civilization, an artificial wormhole large enough to swallow fleets whole. Its swirling core shimmered with unstable energy, casting ghostly light over the ships stationed nearby. Krylok's armada approached in a spear formation, the flagship leading the way, engines flaring bright. On his command deck, the warlord stood tall, the thrill of the hunt in his eyes. "End this," he told his fleet. "Push them through and burn whatever is on the other side." From the far side of the gate, hidden just out of sensor range, the Omega fleet waited. In the darkness, their hulls looked like pieces of the night itself, each one armed with weapons that had not been seen in the galaxy for 1,000 years. They were silent, running cold, their systems masked behind experimental stealth fields. In the lead ship, Iron Dawn, Captain Mira Holt watched the readings on her display. The enemy was almost through. She glanced at Rayfos. "Patience," she said softly. "Let them commit." Krylok's flagship entered the wormhole first, followed by the bulk of his warships. The swirling light swallowed them in a heartbeat, spitting them into the kill zone humanity had prepared. As the first alien ships emerged, their sensors lit up with contacts dozens, then hundreds Omega fleet unfolding from the dark like a predator revealing its teeth. Mira's voice cut through the silence. "Omega fleet, engage." The trap sprang shut. Human dreadnoughts opened fire in perfect unison, their massive cannons unleashing beams of white heat that tore through the enemy's forward line. Torpedoes, guided by AI swarms, punched into the blind spots Eli Naves had uncovered, ripping shields apart before the aliens could adapt. Smaller human strike ships darted between the giant vessels, flanking the disoriented enemy at impossible speeds. On Krylok's bridge, alarms screamed. They were waiting, his second-in-command shouted. Krylok's snarl was pure fury. Form defensive lines, regain control. But the gate was still pulling more of his fleet through, ship after ship, arriving into a storm of fire. His own forward units blocked his ability to retreat, leaving the rest of his armada to pile into chaos. Myra's next order was cold and precise. Activate the gate surge. Deep inside the structure, hidden charges detonated along the wormhole stabilizers, flooding the core with unstable energy. The gate shimmered violently, its light twisting as gravity ripples spread. On the far side, alien ships still waiting to enter suddenly found themselves fighting the pull of the collapsing wormhole. Several were dragged in sideways, their hulls tearing apart under the stress. The half of Krylok's fleet that had made it through now found themselves trapped between the Omega fleet and the unstable gate behind them. The humans pressed their advantage, cutting through warships with ruthless efficiency. One of the massive alien cruisers broke formation, trying to flee, only to be intercepted by two human destroyers that drove straight into its firing arc, hammering its engines until it spun out of control and exploded. From the council chamber, the live feed played out in stunned silence. Worlds that had feared humanity were now watching them fight with a mix of awe and dread. The Virexian elder spoke without looking away from the display. They waited. They lured him here. This is not war as we know it. This is a hunt. Krillok, refusing to yield, ordered his flagship forward, charging directly toward the Iron Dawn. Mira watched the incoming threat, her expression calm. Target his engines, she ordered. I want him alive. The Omega Fleet focused fire, stripping away the flagship's shields, carving deep into its armor. Sparks and fire sprayed from the Warlord's bridge as systems failed one by one. Still, he pushed forward, unwilling to retreat. Finally, as the gate's collapse reached critical levels, Mira gave the final command. Close the gate. With a soundless flash, the structure imploded inward, sealing off the wormhole and leaving the surviving half of Krylok's fleet stranded light years away. The forces trapped on Mira's side were surrounded, outnumbered, and broken. Ship after ship surrendered, their captains transmitting the code of defeat. On the Iron Dawn's bridge, the crew cheered, but Mira only leaned against the rail, watching Krylok's damaged flagship drift. Hail him, she said. When the comms connected, she faced the Warlord's furious, bloodied glare.
What?
This is your last chance to surrender, she told him. Do it, and some of your fleet might live. Refuse, and we finish what you started. Krylok's only answer was a silent, burning stare before the feed cut out. Rafe stepped up beside her. He won't surrender, he said. Mira's eyes stayed on the flagship. I know, she replied. And that's why this isn't over. The final meeting in the Grand Council Hall was unlike any other. The walls seemed to hum with tension, the air thick with the scent of ozone from too many energy weapons hidden under robes. Alien leaders sat in rows, eyes hard, voices sharp. Outside the windows, the sky over the capital world boiled with the movements of Fleet Sally and Fleet Sand, one very dangerous human armada. Every species had sent their finest warships. The council had been meant to stop bloodshed. Instead, it had gathered everyone into one place, ready for it. At the center of the hall stood the human delegation, only 3 of them dressed, not in ceremonial robes, but in simple dark uniforms. Their leader, Captain Reese Calder, had that same calm, infuriating smile he had worn since the first threat was spoken. Round him, alien ambassadors hissed, growled, or clicked their teeth. They had demanded humans submit, demanded they back, away from their defenses. The humans had simply laughed. Now everyone was waiting to see if that laugh had been madness or a promise. The Zathri Prime spoke first, his voice like metal scraping glass. Human, you have one last chance. We'll disarm your fleets, hand over your colonies, and accept our protection. Refuse, and you will be crushed. His words echoed through the chamber. A few alien leaders nodded. Many leaned forward, eager to see the human broken. Calder's smile didn't fade. He took a slow step forward, his boots clicking on the polished floor. You think we came here to bargain, he said, his voice steady. We came to warn you. That single sentence rippled through the room. Murmur rose, confused and tense. Calder glanced at the massive glass window behind him, where dots of light began to multiply in the sky, thousands of them. One alien general stood. What are those? Demanded. Calder didn't even look. So the people you've been trying to intimidate. Every ship you see is crewed by someone who remembers the last war. We didn't forget what peace cost us. You thought we laughed because we were foolish. No, we laughed because you still don't understand what you've started. Outside, the human fleet moved into formation. They didn't aim at the council hall. They aimed outward, toward the fleets that had gathered in orbit, ready to attack. Alien admirals suddenly began shouting orders into their comms, their confidence cracking. The Zathri Prime slammed his claws on the table. You dare threaten the council world? Calder shook his head. We're not threatening. We're promising. You move against humanity, you won't just lose this war, you'll lose the illusion that you can control us. He gestured toward the window again. The stars themselves seemed to dim as a colossal shadow moved into view, a human dreadnought, so massive it blocked out half the horizon. Silence filled the chamber. The sight of that ship, its hull marked with the scars of 100 battles, seemed to drain the fight from the air. No one had believed humans still had such vessels. Then Calder's tone shifted, quiet but deadly serious. We came here for peace. We're still offering it, but if you refuse, you let the words hang, letting the distant thrum of human engines fill the gap. We will end this before it truly begins. For the first time, the alien leaders looked at one another not with pride, but with hesitation. The war they had planned now looked far less certain. Somewhere deep in the council hall, an alarm began to wail. Human forces had already disabled the orbital defense grid. Calder turned to leave. Decide quickly. The millennium of peace doesn't have to end unless you choose to end it. And with that, the humans walked out, leaving the council to face the growing shadow outside one they now understood would never ever bow.